Hello, and welcome to the third Maritime Marine Traffic webinar, held in collaboration with Posidona Events. My name is Phil Lines, and I'm going to be your session coordinator for the next hour or so. Today, we're going to be discussing digitalisation in the maritime sector. It's a topic which I know is subject of countless webinars, white papers, presentations, but I think that the group of practitioners we've gathered today will be able to bring some really interesting perspectives. They're involved with a range of industry projects, including the UN low code, smart containers, data pipelines, to name but a few. So, from marine traffic, we have Stelios Stratodakis, who joins us from Athens. Stelios is marine traffic's head of data, and he works closely with many organisations who collaborate with marine traffic by building on their huge AIS data set. We have Simon George. Simon is Technical Solutions Director at Metro Shipping in the UK. Metro Shipping's a Birmingham-based freight forwarder, which offers services particularly to the retail, manufacturing and chemical sectors. Simon, I think, has been with Metro Shipping for a long time, 23 years, and he's developed a huge amount of IT with the company. Jonathan Lewis is also from the UK, but he brings a very different perspective. He's an innovation manager with the UK Hydrographic Office. That's an organisation which produces the charts which are relied upon by the world's mariners. He says that he loves everything cool, new and geospatial. Bob Den Alden is MSC's Manager of Special Projects, and he's based in the Netherlands. I think MSC needs little introduction, but its cargo division carries 23 million TEU a year, runs hundreds of ships, numerous terminals, and is active on over, I think, 200 trade routes. And last but not least, we have Jaco Forsberg, who works for GS1 Global, a firm which provides the common information standards which allow processes to run across a range of industries, including the supply chain sector. Jaco is a senior manager at the company's transport and logistics division. He's also the vice chairman of the International Task Force on Port Call Optimization, a mission which can only succeed, I think, if we have a common set of standards. But I'd like today to be as interactive as possible. So we have a simple question for the audience to answer. So I'm going to pop a poll up onto the screen, if I can get my software to work. And the question is going to be, to what extent has COVID-19 accelerated digitalisation in your company? So hopefully popping up on the screen, you'll see the question. Has it reduced it? Is it the same? A little? Greatly? Or you simply don't know? So they're still coming in the results. So just give them a couple more seconds. Okay. So Bob Den Alden, do these results surprise you at all?
Not entirely. I think the COVID-19 situation forces everyone to work remotely from home. So I think also that has an aspect of working more in a digital way. So how we look in our company, I think COVID-19 has a devastating effect on each level of our business. But we can use also this time to re-examine our business processes and information flows, which is not done by our own. So we need collaboration with all business partners within a port and an ecosystem in order to make that change. And if we do this well, we can recover some of these losses, value losses of the COVID-19. So yes, digitization in our company, it's an opportunity that arises right now, and we definitely take this moment to re-examine our processes and collaborate and leverage on work done in order to make a difference. We don't
Can
hear
I?
you.
Yeah,
Sorry, I had my
speaking.
audio turned off. Simon, I just wanted to ask what you made of the results from a freight forwarder's perspective.
Yeah, similar to Bob's reaction there. Doesn't surprise me greatly. From Metro's perspective, we've been on the digital transformation journey for some time. COVID's probably accelerated our change. It's intensified the roadmap, if anything. We've taken the opportunity to enhance existing products, brings new solutions to market as well, particularly during the 3-month lockdown that we've had in the UK. There was a lot of our customers actually that were involved with the furlough scheme, the job retention scheme that the UK government brought out, which was fantastic, but that meant a lot of people were unable to work. That could have been an option for us, but for our development team, we kept them on and we worked on those products. And I'm pleased to say we're coming out at the other end with an enhanced roadmap in terms of the progression. Where we could, we've engaged with major stakeholders at the customers where they've been available, and that's the BCOs. And it's pretty obvious the kind of thing that they want. They want real-time data. They want KPIs that will bring benefit and value. Things like the advertised transit times from sea freight carriers versus the actual. It's obviously something that our colleagues at Marine Traffic provide and are able to produce, and it's powerful stuff. It empowers decision making. We've had to be quite careful as well during this time about what we build ourselves and what we buy into. There's lots of, I guess they're known as digital disruptors that are out there that can offer value and you can bring into your own products, and dictating and deciding what you're going to build yourselves and what you're going to buy is an important decision. You've got to listen to your customers, what they want. Sometimes they don't always know what they want. This is where sort of, I suppose, our competitive comes in. Companies like Metro can bring up options to the table. The customer might, the power of the data that's available to them. And just as a final point, really, from my perspective, the data that we do harvest, we use internally as well as push to our customers as well, and that's incredibly important.
Okay, thank you. I should say that I thought the result would appear on everyone's screen, so in case they haven't, I can see them here. 42% say greatly, COVID-19's greatly accelerated digitalization in their company. 31% say a little, 18% say the same, and 6% say they don't know. Jakob.
Yeah, so I should say that our company has been in digitalization for 45 years, I guess. We invented the article number and the barcodes that you see in the point of sale. So in that sense, for us, things haven't changed too much, except for two things. Working from home is definitely something that is kind of new to us, and it's changing the way we work. And another thing that we've been doing quite recently is making sure that we provide services next to our standards to industry, such that the information that's related to those ID keys, such as a product code, is actually more accessible to the stakeholders in the end-to-end supply chain, and also therefore in transport and logistics. Just to give you an idea, GS1 has about 2 million user companies using our standards, that is. And the latest estimates are that every single day in the world, about 10 billion times the GS1 identification key is scanned or used in a digitalized process. So on the one hand, little change or the same in, let's say, daily operations when using our standards. But for us as an organization, we are on a journey, and I think an accelerated journey now towards digitalizing the way we work and the way we provide services to our user base.
And Jonathan, at the UK Hydrographic Office, how have you reacted to this change environment? Is this an opportunity or is it a threat?
Yeah, it's definitely an opportunity. We've been pretty privileged, really, that within 3 days of lockdown, 80% of staff were able to be back online working at full capacity. which is really good. We've seen our ability to produce updates has kind of stayed as normal. Even on some days it's got better, which is fantastic for mariners for safety. We've seen a slight proportional reduction in the sales of paper charts. We think that's probably because it's harder to actually physically get those to the vessel, but digital sales of charts have stayed the same, which is great. And we've been kind of using it as an opportunity to encourage the take up of collaborative tools for kind of the new working at home, as Jaco said. So things like AVCS Online, which is one of our new products, which has been fantastic. And then, like Simon said, we've been really pushing the development of new standards, like everyone else within the hydrographic office world. Kind of, it's a great opportunity to do some of the internal development of projects that you just wouldn't have time to do usually. So thank you.
From across the market, have they changed since lockdown?
I guess the question was to me. I had some slight cracks. Continuing on the same lines, I think that beyond the apparent disruptions on all of us having to work from home and adapt to a new norm, the whole pandemic story showcased how we move forward with digitalization and contribute to an already volatile environment. If we just think about all the things that are going on, tariffs, and it's just a natural progression for digitalization to accelerate. Now, in terms of what we have noticed beyond our adaptability reflex was that this was a time to come even more close to our customer base, as already mentioned by my fellow panelists. I think customer centricity is vital during these days, and we try to stay close to our customers. What we have noted is that there is an obvious delay in decision making, stalling decisions, as everyone is trying to understand how this will play out. But there was a very interesting spike from requests from financial institutions, governmental bodies, and associated organizations who were also trying to understand how this will play out. So there was a major shift towards analytics, aggregated views, AIS-generated events such as port calls, to see how trade imbalances are excelling, how trade shifts are happening. And this was a great opportunity for us because, as you probably know, AIS is a global data set, so it has the capacity to showcase all these shifts. And it's a way to utilize the past, get information about the present, and be in a position to use AIS intentions as a leading indicator for what is about to come. That this trend is here to stay, and analytics, data sharing via APIs is sort of something new norm moving forward. And I truly think that through collaboration, we're moving towards a more connected shipping industry. So under this perspective, I think that the whole disruption can easily turn into an opportunity if we just shape-shift the way we look at it. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. So there's a whole range of maritime standardization initiatives out there. I wonder if the panel could talk us through some of the key ones they're involved with.
If I may take the lead on this one, being in a standardization organization myself. As GS1, we are involved in several of these bullet points that you see on the list. This is by no means a full list of all of the maritime standardization initiatives. So if you're involved in one that's not listed, don't feel offended. This is just the ones that I could quickly remember and put on the slide. UNCFACT is one of the biggest and one of the most respected standardization organizations in the world. They've been around for a long time. I'm pretty sure all of you know about the EDI messages that we've been using a lot for the last couple of decades. More recently, UNCFACT has delivered on a project called Smart Container. And basically that identifies a number of use cases and benefits from using smart containers, where a smart container is, well, basically your normal intermodal container that is equipped with an IoT device that can communicate out through the internet and has a number of sensors attached to it that can tell you about the condition of the surroundings of the container and also the conditions inside the container, and therefore some indicator about the condition of the cargo that's being moved in the container. And clearly that is of huge interest to the beneficial cargo owner and anybody that handles that cargo. Quite recently, the cross-industry track and trace has also kicked off. That's maybe a month and a half old, this project. And this intends to develop a track and trace standard, not just for the smart containers that can communicate on their own, but this is to cover all types of containers, not just in the maritime mode for that matter, but across all of the different modes of transport. I will leave the DCSA to Bob, who's involved in that. Being co-chair for the International Task Force Protocol Optimization, I should say that clearly by its name, it focuses on standardizations of the business process and any and all information exchanges that will help make that port call more efficient, more effective, also more sustainable. And there is a number of deliverables that you may find on the website that is behind the hyperlink in this abbreviation. One of the standardization activities that builds on the work of International Task Force Protocol Optimization is the IMO Global Industry Alliance for Sustainable Shipping, who have published a couple of months ago the Just-in-Time Arrival Guide, which basically intends to achieve that if the port knows and the terminal knows when exactly a vessel may be loaded or unloaded at the berth, then calculating back from that berth availability, the vessel will be informed as to when they should arrive at port, such that they are just in time for the loading and unloading, basically meaning that you can adjust the shipping speed and therefore be far more sustainable in bunker fuel usage and therefore exhausts into the environment. And I will leave it at this for now. I will hand over, for instance, to Bob, who may explain a bit more about the DCSA and any of the other ones.
Yeah, thank you, Jacco. As being SME for the ITPCO and the DCSA, I shortly will describe what is the complementary initiatives on those. DCSA is an association of container carriers, which is covering 70% of the container carrier fleet. And what we are trying to do is to find common use cases, business cases that we all recognize, that we find work done where we can complement or leverage on. So we can do not or try to avoid come up with new standards, but we try to kickstart and adopt existing standards for the use cases and business cases that we all have been defining. And with that, we also try to draft potential pilot programs that we can kickstart collectively with the members of the DCSA. Why we're doing this is that we think, as a container carrier association of digitization, that our business process and information flows are quite similar to the between the members. There might be differentiating on how we call certain things, but effectively, physically, the process is almost the same. And we think that we can make, or at least start making a difference on different initiatives that the DCSA started, and that we try to build such solutions or such pilot programs that also allows other industry partners from another angle to join pilots further on down the road. And with that said, we work collaboratively also with the ITPCO, with the IPCHA, also with some UNC-FACT standards. So it's a combination of different initiatives, and at least to make a start from our perspective as container carriers to make a start. Up to you, Bill.
Thank you. So Stelios, do you have some comments here around the data observing, validating and forecasting? Perhaps I could hand this slide over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Getting myself off the screen as well, so that anyone can see the slide. What we're trying to describe here, and building on all these standardization initiatives that have been mentioned by Jaco and Bob, is that when it comes to data and the relevant digitalization efforts from our perspective as a services, as a solution provider, it all boils down to two major notable patterns, which is the voyage part and the port call process. And this is where the room for opportunities and efficiencies is there and can be accelerated by boosting digitalization efforts forward. Among other things, obviously, like business process automation, like simplifying documents exchange, and so on. When it comes to the voyage part, we obviously have the real-time monitoring part, but we can also think of the advancements on technology in general, such as how weather routing is made possible through Earth observation from space, Internet of Things, sensors. And Jaco already mentioned the efforts of the Global Industry Alliance on speed optimization, and where awareness and visibility is key, because this connects with consumption and emissions, so there is huge room there as well, and major environmental gains, totally in line with the sustainability goals set. A key takeaway from the works we have provided, we have worked together with IMO GIA, was the realization of the rush to wait effect in this whole process. Vessels speeding and arriving quite earlier, only to find themselves waiting at an anchorage because there's no availability at the port. And just think of how much this affects the works of so many stakeholders involved in this. So this is where it all goes back to connecting the industry and the need for collaboration. Now, the port call process itself is what I like to call a choreography, if executed right. And given that this will be extensively discussed in the upcoming webinar in this series, I would like to go back to the importance of data relay and sharing in a timely, robust manner. And this is something that standardization has a vital role to play in. Think of simple information that has to be relayed and communicated to stakeholders, such as and information that is time critical, such as the ETA, for example. This can be transmitted by the vessel or requested by the port. A service provider like Marine Traffic may make it available via calculations. It is important that everyone involved in this process, from the vessel, from the port side of things, nautical provision, services, everyone has the same understanding of this information. And this is where things get interesting, which leads to the need for interoperable systems and the importance of having timely available data to further optimize the whole industry. So building on these two patterns and getting this right, I think is the way to go. Over to you, Bill.
Can you go back to the previous slide a minute, Bill, if you don't mind? I would like to stress one thing in relationship to the digitalization of the maritime mode or maritime transportation. I really like this slide for what I would call the subsection of an end-to-end supply chain or transport and logistics network. And clearly with maritime industry responsible for 2/3 of all ton kilometers transported in the world over any distance in any mode, this is a very important subsegment of the supply chain. I do want to stress though that for the beneficial cargo owner, that little green arrow that we see there on the left hand side and again on the right hand side, for them they really are interested in everything that's before it enters into a port for being loaded and then shipped, and also about when it leaves the port again on any connecting mode of transport. So when we look at digitalization for the maritime mode, we should be looking, in my view anyway, to the digitalization efforts and the digitalization learnings from other modes of transport.
Okay, thank you. Any other panel members have any comments about this slide?
Yes, maybe I can add some on Jacco as well. So when you speak about the process from we have two types of maritime industry when you come to port visit. We have tramp and we have liner schedules. But what's inevitable is that we all entering the port and that we all need clearances for getting into the port based on safety, availability of berth, and availability of nautical suppliers. So one way or another, we need for ports to be lightened up as an Intel ecosystem. It will not work if we have real-time information exchange only for container carriers arriving to a port. We need real-time information exchange for all parties and all actors in the port to make an ecosystem work within a port, but also between ports. And maybe I want to highlight more the known knowns, unknowns, knowns, etc., whereby we oftenly make decisions based on old data or old information. So wrong decision taking at a certain moment of time for execution or planning for certain services or arriving at the port. And with that said, we think that if we find a way to set up an ecosystem where we can share based on a data governance model, of course, because there is data that should not be shared out there with everyone, but we can make a difference of the way how we work today. Because 9 out of 10 times, if we look to certain disruptions in our process, it's oftenly information that was not shared with you. So that's a given fact. But if you would have had that information timely, you could have made different planning or other different decisions to avoid or to accept certain delays. And that accept of certain delays, that also brings forward for the hinterland connection. If we can provide real-time trustful information towards our clients or other actors in the chain, they can also adapt their planning instead of hurry up and wait at the port waiting for their cargo or container.
Thank you. So there are some sweeping reforms by the EU coming in, the way it treats VAT and e-commerce. Perhaps, Jacco, if I could ask you to give us a little overview of what's happening and what's on the horizon.
Yeah, I actually feel that this is probably one of the most, let's say, impactful changes that's coming down the line for the maritime industry. We might have felt that we escaped the impact from e-commerce, but I think we will find that with this new legislation, we will no longer escape the tidal wave of change that e-commerce has had on supply chains everywhere else. So with that sort of primer, what is it that I'm talking about? The European Union has already issued a directive maybe, well, 3.5 years ago. And originally it had a deadline for the member states of the European Union to implement the directive by the 1st of January 2021. But that has been postponed and recently confirmed by the Council to be the 1st of July 2021 as a result of the COVID crisis. What is this legislation? The legislation is actually quite simple. So every single e-commerce item as of 1st of July 2021 has to be declared and VAT has to be paid for these items. In the past, there was an exemption up to 22 euros, and that will go away. The result of this new legislation to why you have to now declare and pay means that the economic operators involved in moving the e-commerce items across the EU borders and also the member state authorities will have to deal with at least a 15-fold increase, and in some countries a 30-fold increase in the number of declarations they will need to handle. Just as an example, in France they currently do 10 million per annum declarations. That will go to estimated 300 to 350 million declarations per annum. Now, clearly, those submissions can no longer be done by change from paper-based to a digitalized way of working. I will not bore you with what it means for the web shop, but what will be important for us is the fact that the declarations now have to be done on an individual sales order transaction level. So everything we buy online as an individual sales order will have to be declared. Basically, just in a nutshell, if we have a container crossing the border into the European Union containing e-commerce items, there may be 1,000 or 1,500 of these sales transactions in a single container. Whereas you could get away with a single declaration in the past, these will now be 1,000 or 1,500 separate declarations to customs. So maritime mode, anybody who moves e-commerce items will be affected by this. And the other thing is that this legislation allows for, even endorses, the use of global data standards such as ISO 15459.
Yeah. I think we have a technical problem because nobody hears us anymore. Bill, can you check the chat also?
Yeah, I can hear everybody. I think if we could just reconnect anyone who, well, if you can't hear me, you can hear me.
I can hear you, yeah.
Not a problem, but I think
if I look to the chat of visitors, nobody can hear us in some way.
I think people are coming back by utilizing the reconnect button. So we're good. Let's go on.
Okay. Well, actually, my chat seems to have frozen on a comment quite a long time ago. So there tend to. It looks like we do have some issues. But I will continue anyway because I don't know how we could fix it from my end. The last final point is that global data standards, ISO 15459, may be used, and it actually makes a lot of sense for the seller to use those numbers for the transaction identification and for the individual parcel/transport unit identification in the submissions to both the VAT authorities as well as the customs authorities in the member states of the European Union. And clearly, because I am in GS1, I have to also state that GS1 identification keys comply with these ISO standards.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Jaco. Simon, it's not just about EU legislation, there's also Brexit's coming our way as well. What's going to be the impact of all these big changes to legislation that are coming where from your point of view?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up as well, Bill. We won't get into the policy and everything else, but it's clear there's some big changes out there. Metro are freight forwarder and customs agents, so Brexit, it's happening. The transition isn't being extended, and the 31st of December is now firmly set in stone. Again, like Jaco's figures there's some rather scary numbers being circulated of an additional 500,000 declarations every week are going to be incurred due to Brexit. And that's despite a phased approach on imports from the UK side, at least. It goes without saying, really, collaboration and data exchange is absolutely required for a sustainable solution anyway. Automation and workflow is the only way that I can see this working. Master data is going to be required. Transactional data and feeds are going to be needed, and that data needs to be mapped in a standardized way. The digitization of documents is going to be key, and I'd encourage any BCOs out there, and if they haven't dusted off their Brexit planning, now is definitely the time to do so. You won't regret having a look into making those kind of decisions. We've adapted our solutions accordingly. So MVT and our brokerage software has been adapted. We're aligning very closely with the core component library and its subset, the multimodal transport reference data model from UNC Fact, again going back to standards that Jaco and Stelios pointed out. The only way we're going to be able to achieve this is by data exchange, automation, and the use of standards. Thanks, Bill.
Maybe Bob, can you respond to any of those two legislations and the impact on a shipping line like yourself?
Yeah, it's definitely not my cup of tea in total, but definitely it would have an effect on our customers. Let's say that within the EU, European Union, a shipping company is not allowed to interfere with custom declarations. Though it is part of releasing container of a terminal. So if it looks like a minor change if we speak on the legislation, but it has a huge impact definitely on our clients in that particular case. So I think it will increase the effort of releasing containers on terminal side. So definitely there need to be a deep dive into it. What will be the news? What the new situation will change effectively on customer support side. So for me, it's also new. I definitely will reach out to my colleagues of customer service if they are aware of this legislation coming up and what are their backup plans when certain issues rising. because that can definitely have a backlog eventually on the terminal and the throughput of terminal containers through the terminal.
Okay.
Thank you. Stelios, maritime digitalisation, unlocking opportunities. I think you've got some interesting thoughts you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I think that the point of the whole discussion at the end of the day is why are we doing all this? Why is digitalization such a hot topic? And it would be interesting to see some answers on the chat. I mean, from the people, what would be the biggest opportunity based on their point of view of the industry they're in? This is an attempt to collect some thoughts. So what do we have to do to get it right? We mentioned standardization. We mentioned the need for collaboration among stakeholders and data sharing, and obviously on an access level, because there is information that is critical, cannot be shared with anyone. The thing is that we have to focus on delivering value here and showcase clear benefits. It was mentioned that information has to be timely relayed so that all those involved, let's say in a port call process, can plan ahead. It's all about early planning and effective operations. But the gains are not just on the productivity side of things. And obviously, being savvy with data is not enough. I mean, data, you can ask data, you can utilize analytics, you can you can generate questions by just looking at data, but the thing is that we have to work together to get to answers and better ways of doing things. So this is where the market expertise for the people involved in specific industry is very, very important. And working together with technological providers and even technological providers working together to come to this interoperability state. Because this is what will eventually create scalable solutions. Each port, each vessel, each shipowner may develop solutions on their own, but at the end of the day, all these systems have to be able to talk to each other, so to speak. And this is why I mentioned the importance of generating analytics and statistics from the past, but also making this available seamlessly between machines. Something that is fundamental in shipping, especially, is building trust among stakeholders, and this is very, very important. This is how we get to creating value. This is how we answer all questions more convincingly. So we can think of the gains in terms of optimizing assets utilization. And by assets, I'm not only referring to vessels, but also on the human capital, on people who are performing works around the port, on smaller vessels that have to assist nautical provisions. All these is fundamental towards the whole process. Now, we mentioned timely operations, processes. We can also think of OPEX cutting and control expenses, especially during times of volatility, during uncertain times such as this one. We mentioned the pandemic, we mentioned the disruptive impact of regulations at times, but it is, I think, towards the right direction. It is important to be able to get to the cargo level. And also, this is the one-way road towards meeting sustainability goals and meeting compliance needs. At the end of the day, it's all about having informed stakeholders. And this can only happen by having the industry getting more and more connected. This is why we insist on customer centricity. We have to work together to understand the challenge and rethink how it can be answered with the use of data in a confident way and provide meaningful answers. So consider this slide an attempt to summarize some of the thoughts around all this, take into account the fact that technology is rising and it's rising fast. I mentioned fintech earlier, finance institutions and such organizations, and it's very easy to think how much space there is. For example, think a monetary transaction without having proper standards in place, and how seamlessly we now perform these transactions. This is something that can happen in the maritime world as well. This is my belief.
Thank you. If I could ask all the panel to put their cameras on and their audio. I mean, these are all very lovely sentiments. I've been at lots of seminars and webinars where collaboration, standardization, these are themes which aren't new. Has COVID-19 changed everything? Do you think this is actually going to happen now? Does any of the panel have a view on this?
Yeah, I'll talk really quickly. I think, listening to Stelios, I think it's fantastic to think about all the possibilities better standardization offers us, especially when we considered like the benefits of digitalization right now within COVID-19. But I still think there's a massive challenge within the industry that it's such a diverse industry, and actually what we do by pushing digitalization is we risk leaving behind a huge part of the sector that just can't keep up, be that small shipping companies or smaller ports who just don't have the capital to invest into new systems. And I think we really need to consider how we can help them kind of not disappear.
Thank you. I mean, Bob, you represent a large shipping company. What do you say to that?
Yeah, the unlock opportunities. I think if I look to maybe a similar situation in 2009, if you look to a moment that we need to re-examine how we do work, because we have less profit or less business to do right now. So you look to opportunities that are out there, or let's say easy fruit, I wouldn't say, but there are huge potentials of standardizing business process and information flows in our marine industry. I think we are the less effective industry if it comes towards sharing information or documents, and that cost, let's say, a lot of time and also a lot of money. So I think in this situation where we're in right now is that we try to embrace the initiative that started. We try to find a collective way with industry partners to kickstart certain initiatives that we have on the rollout already for a while. And I think this situation with the COVID only accelerates these initiatives, because we now see also, or at least we need those benefits also for what that potentially can bring us.
If I may add something, so this COVID crisis has at least made one thing very clear and obvious. When push comes to shove, people make distinctions between essential and non-essential goods, meaning that you need to know about, well, quite a lot of detail about the cargo. And the maritime mode has struggled a lot to provide that information to those that need it to clear the goods through customs and make them available, well, at the right place, at the right time in these times of crisis. So in my view, this is an impression that I hope and expect will persist with the community, and hopefully people will take more of an interest in actually the cargo itself than only moving the cargo around, because we see lots of tendencies or regulation, like the e-commerce regulation we were just talking about, that will make it mandatory to become interested in the cargo. And building on that, your statement earlier, Bob, about other industries being more advanced. Well, yes, to some extent, but also to some extent not. But one extent, I would definitely say yes. They tend to be further along in electronic paperwork or consignment notes. So, for instance, in air cargo, penetration is about 60% or better for consignments being moved under an airway bill, being an electronic airway bill. We have the ECMR that's becoming more or less now adopted across Europe because the various member states have endorsed the ECMR in their legislation. Similar things are happening in the rail industry. And unless I'm mistaken, similar levels of electronic paperwork are still far away in the maritime industry. But I believe DCSA has something on the cards there. I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, correct. We at the moment DCSAs have different initiatives starting right now, and they have some work published already. And one of those projects that they're picking up is now the electronic bill of lading, because it's highlighted as one of the huge potentials within our industry, and also prerequisite for other digital initiatives. Were more fancy in the past, like blockchain, but without an electronic bill of lading, a blockchain will never work. So we have projects listed up in a certain order of prerequisites to eventually expand to full digitization, and one of them is indeed the electronic bill of lading.
Bill, just going back to your original point there, I think unless you're a very, very fortunate organisation, COVID-19 is going to have made a dramatic impact on your business. I was reading an article this morning that said that the majority of the world are going to be down by 30% in terms of what they're able to do going forward, certainly for the next 2 to 3 years. So it's all about efficiency. It's all about trying to do more with the same or probably less. And so I think in terms of what has COVID-19 done, it actually has drawn that line in the sand. I've been to many, many seminars and I've heard people stand up and talk about digitalisation and it's coming and it's coming. It does feel like now is the time because it has to. And that's why it feels a little bit different.
Exactly. I think, Simon, that it is a one-way road. It's probably the only road moving forward. And I also think that the timing, although this sounds a bit strange, it's good because technologically wise, I think we're beyond the hype. I mean, there has been a lot of chatting about new technologies, AI, machine learning. My view is that all of these are very, very useful as long as they are able to give meaningful answers. So let's use them. But if the answer is simple, let's simplify it. So I really think that we are entering the productivity plateau in the shipping industry. There is, of course, a lot of uncertainty. We already mentioned that there is some protection tendencies, some macroeconomic changes, but I still think that this is the way to go. And we also have to take into account that during this period of extensive lockdowns all over the globe, shipping was the backbone of keeping the world moving. I mean, we all know that the vast majority of goods, of everything that we see around us, has been probably carried within the ship during its life cycle. So we also have to keep into account the human factor and how essential the seafarers and this industry is to the whole world. So I would like to point this out as well, moving forward, and that there is room for improvements also in the terms of crew wellness, and we keep hearing a lot about crew management issues. So let's also keep this into account.
Thank you. Well, I think that's probably an appropriate point at which to end the discussion. Been a lot of interesting perspectives here from the panelists, so thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you again to Posidonia Events who've helped put this event on with marine traffic. There are a load of handouts as well on the side, some files. Again, I'm not entirely sure if the audience can see them or not. If you're not able to see them, I'm sure that we'll be sending a link out to everyone who's in on this call. And I believe this webinar will also appear online on YouTube, and so you can watch it again at your leisure. Thank you again, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.